this is Guitarist Denis Taaffe, and I'm in my home studio, and I want to welcome you to the making of my 330th album. Hard to believe. It's been that many albums ago since I started my first album in 1999. In any case, my 330th album is called Modern Rock Guitar Vol.330, Lifeline. And real quick, for those who aren't familiar with my music, I'm a guitarist who uses regular guitar and guitar loops done on the fly, which basically means I take part of what I'm playing and record it via a pedal board, and then it starts looping, and then I find other guitar ideas and sounds, and I layer guitar parts one on top of the other to create instrumental music. Beyond that, I also imitate, or emulate if you like, bass guitar on guitar using pitch shifters, and then sometimes what sounds like keyboards and other instruments on there. All the tracks, all my recordings, all the tracks on the album are improvised on the spot. In other words, I haven't written it out ahead of time, and I haven't, added overdubs after the initial recording and that kind of thing. So what you hear is really what came out of my two speakers from my amplifiers. Usually I play in stereo, and for this particular album I used two Black Star amplifiers. Okay, real quick, let's talk about the album cover. Special thanks to my childhood friend Jody Tyndall. And he basically went to school with me, and I guess had gone to Europe and had taken some photos and said if I wanted to use some for some album covers, he'd send them over, so he did, and I picked one, and so I added myself, it's a picture of a bridge, and basically I added a little picture of myself, and they're throwing out a lifeline to me, but instead of a buoy or something like that, it's a guitar. Makes sense to me, so that's why it was called Lifeline. And after this many albums, I have to be very careful of not repeating album titles, so hopefully I didn't on this one. We'll see. Now the album this time comprises of 7 tracks, make up the album, and one of them, the very first track, is in fact quite long. It's 13 minutes and 43 seconds long, in fact, and that's pretty long, usually, even if it's a long one, I try to limit it to about 10 minutes at the most. After that I start editing them and, cutting them, or maybe making 2 tracks out of one, depending. And in fact, this first track was in fact about 16 minutes long at the beginning, and it actually spawned a little 3-minute track which ends the album, which is Lifeline Part 2. In this case, we're going to listen to Part 1, which opens the album. And I should tell you, I kind of, I had just gotten done with Volume 329, and I have to say I kind of hesitated, going right away into making this album. I never try to rush these albums, and I realize I make quite a few albums, and you would think I'd be rushing, make one, do another one, and it's not like that at all. In fact, one because it's improvised on the spot, and you know, nothing is worked out ahead of time. I always wonder, you know, if this is the album or just nothing seems to work or nothing seems to gel. You know, what if I can't play anymore, and, you know, correctly and this kind of thing. Now, that's usually if I think about it. Most of the time I don't think about it, I just do it because I like it. However, what I was hoping for was some inspiration. You know, those are the albums that you really want to make, or when you're, you know, creating music, you want to be inspired in some way. And it just so happens, of course, that Eventide, and I own one of their little effects pedals, the H9, had come out with a new algorithm, and it was free to H9 users who own the pedal. And I had put off upgrading, you know, because usually I have a hard time upgrading. There's always run into errors and that kind of thing, and you have to get out of, you know, and connect via Bluetooth and all this stuff. However, I had upgraded not too long before, so I was really familiar with the process, and some of the things that got me into trouble previously, such as you have to unhook the MIDI cable from the pedal for it to work correctly, to upgrade correctly. So anyway, with all that, so I woke up one day and I was just determined to go ahead and, you know, keep that pedal updated. So I went through the process and things, and they had just come out with this effect called a armadillo. It's basically a tremendously complex tremolo unit, as you'd find in old Fender amps usually, you know, the silver face, you know, or the black face Fenders with they have reverb, but then they also have this tremolo unit. Kind of reminds you of the Wild West type things. So I was thrilled to have updated that, and I wanted to see if I could use some of those sounds for the new album, which was volume 330. And all of a sudden I realized, man, I'm really inspired. I want to play and record and see what these new sounds sound like. You know, see if I can incorporate them. And I mean, I just barely scratched the surface. And the way I did it is, basically I just went through, it comes with presets for the algorithm. Man, there were about 30 of them. So I just picked one at random, you know, and said, okay, well, let's see what we can do with this one. And then, during the recording, I would maybe pick out another preset, you know, and get a different kind of sound. And this was great, except that I remember that and I believe it's one of these tracks had a preset that you know, you really could hardly use. It was really kind of a strange sound, you know, almost like a sound effect. And we'll get to that here shortly. In any case, so I was inspired. Plus, this was a big deal because this was my 330th album, right? For me, that's kind of a milestone. So it's got to be a special album. It can't just be, you know, a run-of-the-mill album. And they never are, you know, for me. I'm always surprised, you know, at which musical direction they go in, what they sound like, and that kind of thing. In any case, okay, let's take a listen to Lifeline Part 1 of this 13-minute opus. Almost 14 minutes. Okay, and let's take a listen to that. And you'll hear right away that armadillo preset that I used a brand new sound that I had never used before. And it set up kind of like the mood, the atmosphere of the track. So there's that main riff. And there's that armadillo kind of tremolo sound. And there's that bass emulation as well. So they're definitely blues influenced, you know. So I got carried away on this track very much. I knew exactly what musical direction I wanted it to go in because of the initial mood, atmosphere it creates. I looped an initial riff with that armadillo and then switched to another sound and added kind of blues fills. So there, I used a lot of double stops. Okay, let's fast forward a bit. We'll go to the 7-minute mark. So there I'm adding the delayed guitar repeating patterns. Okay. And if I fast forward again, here's a 11-minute. So here I've got quite a few layers going and playing guitar fills and ideas. Fun putting in little leads. Okay. Kind of blues leads and that kind of thing. For those of you who have the Armadillo algorithm on the H9, the main riff guitar is just preset 1. You know, so you can get that exact same sound that I was using. And I believe it's this track, this second track coming up, where I use some Armadillo presets that I wish I had listened to before I used them, because they were quite hard to use them because I wasn't familiar with them. Okay, and this second track is called Trauma. And let's take a listen to that. Same kind of thing. I chose a Armadillo preset sound, tremolo sound, and went from there, basically. Yes. There's that harmonized guitar preset that I use quite often. It gives it kind of a medieval type sound, if there's such a thing. There's the main theme for this track. Okay, now here comes the second guitar part. Now here's the tremolo part that maybe wasn't the best choice. I don't know if you can hear that little lead sound right here. It almost sounds distorted. But what that really is a Armadillo preset, but just a very, very fast tremolo. Too fast. So I switched to a different preset right there. And I think this one's called Echo Ghost or something like that. There's some double stops and fills over that main riff, which is looping. Yeah, and you can hear that kind of tremolo-ish sound. The nice color to the normal clean guitar sound. Remember, the focus of my music is really film music, and I could certainly see this within a film, in a psychological thriller, or drama, or what have you. Certain scenes in films. So here I'm kind of building the track, and so I've got two main parts going there, right? I've got the low end, which is kind of the first tremolo sound, and then over that, a second guitar part. And so there's building. This track's about 7 minutes long, so let's go to about the 6-minute mark. So here I've kind of gone crazy with different ideas and different guitar parts. And it really ended up working well, moving the track along, giving it some motion. Without losing track of the main theme. And by putting all those guitar parts together, trying to make it sound like one large guitar part. Remember, this was recorded recorded in October. I think late at night, actually. So it's kind of a rainy night, you know, and there are wet leaves on the ground, that kind of October sound, at least that we have here in Bloomington, Indiana. And so here something quite odd happened that I wasn't intending. For some reason, the next two tracks are really, I don't know how to describe them, soft tracks. Kind of like, you know, if you're outside and you suddenly feel a little breeze go by, you know, a little cooling breeze, and you go, oh, that's really nice, you know. It's kind of like that. I'm not sure why that happened. You know, because definitely the first two tracks are pretty dark, really, you know, mood-wise and atmosphere-wise. And on top of that, maybe it was a Armadillo algorithm, I'm not sure. But all of a sudden those Black Star amps came alive with this really nice, clean solo sound. So I definitely went for that and used it. So let's take a listen to track 3. And it's actually is 2 tracks as well. And track 3 was called Anesthesia, or Anastasia, if you like. Part 1. Okay. And then it was also track 6 is part 2. But part 2 is much shorter. So let's take a listen to that, and you'll see all of a sudden the total mood and atmosphere changes. You know, I don't know, maybe I was just having a good time trying out these new sounds, you know. Let's take a listen. Now that solo guitar, I believe, is just the Black Stars. I really love that clean tube sound. And behind it, I'm playing this kind of a rhythm and letting those reverb trails follow. Almost sounds like a keyboard kind of in the background. Kind of reminds me of a Mark Knopfler, Dire Straits kind of solo sound. Yeah. On previous albums recently, you know, I've gotten into so much of concentrating on sounds with effects and things. It was nice to, without any soloing, it was nice to throw in some solos here and there. So obviously this is a very light track, as far as moods and atmosphere goes. Kind of soft and gentle, if you like. There's some guitar swells. Okay. So let's fast forward that to the, let's see, how about the 6-minute and 28-second mark. So by this time I've added the bass line. And there I realized the tempo is really slow here. trying to find the timing for the delayed guitar to come in. And it all builds up to a large climax at the end, if you like. As I recall, I was just enjoying myself playing in my room and just being really inspired, you know. And yeah, that was a lot of fun there. Now here, this track coming up is very odd. I called it Memories, but in reality, I should have called it something like Baby Kittens, or, you know, something very, very small and delicate. And this is basically how this track, you know, occurred. I suppose if it was on a heavy metal album, they would have called it a panty melter. Okay. And this one, I thought the last one was really soft. But this one is even softer with a little guitar melody. Let's take a listen to that one. The idea for this track actually started not with a little guitar melody at the top, you know, playing the double stops and fills and things, but actually if you listen to the, I guess it's called the bass line, it's actually 3 chords, right? Right there it goes, da, da, da. That's why I started looping, and that's why I got the idea for this track. And then I added a little, you know, tearjerker guitar melody. There I added some harmonics. I call the track Lovely, and there's a reason behind that, and that is I remember I sent some music to a company in England, and they wrote me back telling me it was lovely, only to discover I don't think they ever really listened to it at all. So not quite sure lovely is a term of endearment in England. And I was quite surprised at how delicate this track was, how soft it was. You know, notice the tempo a lot slower as well. And then I tried putting in a kind of a muted rhythm guitar, kind of like you'd hear Andy Summers of the Police do. You know, so I added that. See if I can get that kind of Police type sound. That was my idea anyway when I was playing it. So it's kind of that muted staccato kind of, you know, they're chords and you play the single notes muted with a delay on it. And then it was fun doing the solo over it with the different fills and so on. And in fact, Let's fast forward to the 5-minute, 20-second mark. And there's a guitar part with a huge reverb, giving it depth, as if somebody is, walking away from you, or that kind of thing, or saying goodbye, that kind of thing. Floating away, drifting away, if you like. There's those 3 chords. That was the basis for this track. And it all builds together. So, in any case, I was quite surprised. That came out of nowhere, really. I mean, I was trying to go for some deep, dark, cool, atmospheric tracks, and all of a sudden, these little, it reminds me of little baby kittens. The panty melter, if you like. Okay, in any case, let's move on to track 5. And track 5, I called it Anxiety. And it's 11 minutes and 15 seconds. Same kind of thing. I use the Armadillo algorithm to set up a rhythmic track to work over, see where it would lead. And I happened upon this preset, and so let's take a listen to that track. And it's quite long. It's 11 minutes and 15 seconds. Alright, and now here's your basically tremolo riff, guitar riff. And you can hear that kind of tremolo-ish sound of the guitar, almost like a univibe kind of thing. Yeah, and what I'm really pleased about is that little riff right there changes. The fill each time kind of changes. So it's not always the same notes. You gotta listen real closely. Cool. So that sets up the kind of eerie, moody atmosphere of this track. Almost like a classic rock kind of riff. Okay. And here I'm adding the bass emulation. Let's fast forward a bit to the 5-minute mark. So here you've got some clean guitar doing some fills. You've got some repeating guitar all over this main riff. And what I really like about this repeating guitar riff is that the chords underneath are changing. And this reminds me very much of a track by Tangerine Dream on the Risky Business soundtrack. They had this long track called The Train. It's very similar to that in the way that it builds over time. It's got that repeating pattern, but if you listen underneath, the chords are changing. go to the 9-minute 54 mark. So here I've got layers of repeated guitars, repeating guitar patterns, layered on top of each other. And there I've added just some normal guitar fills to accent the chord changes underneath. So of course, by this time when I'm recording, I'm in a totally different place. Not even thinking about the recording, just concentrating on that musical piece that I'm working on right there. Yeah, I'd say that's probably the best track on the album, I think, personally. In any case, from there, basically, we only have 2 tracks left, and it's Anesthesia Part 2, right here, and here you can see here, it differs in Part 1 in that it's only 3 minutes long, and here, of course, the themes are more defined. You can hear some of that. And also has some different guitar licks, if you like, solo. It's a different solo. And these are just guitar swells where I play a chord and then strike the strings, but then turn up the volume. So you never hear me striking the strings. And this is why it sounds kind of like a keyboard, really. Very quiet. Alright, let's fast forward that a bit. So here I've got this kind of guitar solo-ish kind of feel. And I really like it because it really shows off that kind of Black Star clean tube sound, which I really love. And while these solos sound really simple, very easy to hit a wrong note. So you've got to really choose your notes carefully there. That's what I really like is I'm able to do, guitar techniques that I usually only can do on the distorted guitar. But here I can do it on the clean guitar sound. Okay. So that's a real soft track, and it's a nice change from the track before, the 11-minute track, which was kind of this dark, eerie sound. However, I thought that it kind of left the album, kind of a downer, because it's soft and that kind of thing. So I thought, well, I don't want to end the album that way. And it just so happens I had a little bit left over from the first track. And so that became the closing track, and I think it fits really nicely because it makes the album real concise, and it brings the listener back up, after this last track's a real soft one. So let's just hear that one. It's a short track, about 3 minutes. And there you go. This is kind of like the conclusion. It's got that delayed guitar that I like very much. I use that all the time. This kind of patterns with delays, you know, repeating patterns. I'm using another guitar layer to accent chord changes and that kind of thing. And there's some chord voicings. A little guitar solo thing, you know. That's kind of a, you know, tip of the hat to Jimi Hendrix, who'd always have these little notes where he could just bend a note, you know, out of nowhere. Just and that's it. That completes volume 330. And I have to say, I'm really pleased with it. When I first recorded it, I thought, gosh, it's really different than the previous album and the album before it. Especially those real soft tracks. And I was really inspired, you know, just from trying out those armadillo sounds. Now, you know, I've just scratched the surface. I haven't even really gone into depth and really chosen, you know, which tracks I like or which presets I like, and, well, you know, kind of fine-tune to make my own. So, as I edited the album, you know, put the tracks together, I realized that it really was a step forward compared to my other albums, just in a kind of a different musical direction, you know. I'll tell you this much, if it wasn't for the fact that these tracks are improvised on the spot, I guarantee you I would have not have done 330 albums. I would have gotten bored very quickly, you know, certainly. So here, I was excited to hear how all the tracks fit together into an album, creating a theme. And this one, like many of the others, are very, very smooth, you know, and it's the one thing you don't get when I just, you know, cut little clips from each track. But when they come together into a whole album and you listen to the whole thing, you realize that, well, that track just has to be there, or else it kind of ruins the entire overall theme of the album. Excuse me. Beyond that, the fact that there's these two little soft tracks, and I really enjoyed those because I got to play some solos, clean, you know, give you that real tube amp kind of clean guitar sound that I really like. So I guess I should have thanked Eventide for putting out that armadillo and inspiring me to create Volume 330. And beyond that, I've just touched the surface, so I'm definitely going to keep on going, in this direction. I've got a whole bunch of ideas. Part of it is including drums. I haven't done that in quite a while. Remember, tracks or albums 1 through 200 are what I consider rock albums, and 200 to 330 so far are kind of new age, kind of film music. However, wouldn't it be interesting to combine the two? So those are some of the ideas I have, or maybe adding drums to these. The other things I'm going to start working on using, of course, different sounds, but also different tempos and things. And I'm also considering, I've been using 2 amps, and I'd like to see what it would be like adding more amps and kind of blending them together. Anyway, these are ideas for the future. But for right now, I'm very pleased to release Volume 330, Lifeline. Definitely a solid album for me, with a lot of neat sounds, I think. Okay. So that's the making of Volume 330. Alright, see you next time. Bye.